Hello,
Hello,
everyone. Welcome to this week's Wonkette chat. I'm with
disappeared.
Robin.
Shit. Okay, I'm back. Ah, this is weird. Um,
I'm here with Robin Panakia, who was having some technical difficulties, but
someone, can you see me now?
yes.
Okay.
So let's just jump right into it while my wife is still listening. And so Friday on Fox News, The Five, co-host Martha McCallum. Just so you know, she's the blonde anchor on Fox
Oh, the
News.
blonde one. Ooh,
She says, "I'm not big on sick days. I don't think you should
ooh.
have these say six days a year. People say, oh, I'm taking a sick day tomorrow, which I think is really bogus." And the panel all agreed that they never take sick days. They're uh, superhuman. And she says, I say we just come in and cough all over each other and push through. I mean, that's the way we work. Okay, so I try to avoid kind of calling out Fox News absurdity unless it's part of some larger theme. But unfortunately, this counts, given that we're still in the midst of a pandemic. This
Yeah.
is not a sitcom. This is not satire. This is how a actual human being feels. Your thoughts, Robin?
Um. Well, the irony is that hold on, let me find the exact figure. Um, people they call it presenteeism, where people go into work when they're sick and like therefore do not do very well at their jobs and make mistakes because they're sick. um, they're medicated, they're not feeling well, they're taking they take a lot of other people down with them. It costs businesses in the United States 150 billion per year according to the Harvard Business Review. So it's actually like a bad thing for business. It is just a good thing for people's egos because people like to be able to say, "Oh, I always, I would never take a sick day. I'm practically a saint." And, on the other end of it, it's people who, their bosses won't let them take sick days. They won't uh, pay, one third of workers in the United States does not get any like paid time off at all because we're weird here. Um, and it actually costs way more money to not give people sick days than it would to give them sick days.
And that seems very logical and efficient. But I think the challenge is that, and this is what McCallum is sort of promoting, because the idea that even when people do have sick days, they are, as you say, the presenteeism. They are sort of consider it some sort of badge of honor to quote
Yeah,
unquote push through. That obviously impacts. They know it impacts promotion and their annual reviews
yeah,
and whatever, and productivity and so forth. But I think in the same study, they said that it's not just infectious disease. It's like people who don't take time off from work can suffer from stress and burnout,
hmm,
which can cause or exacerbate health problems, including heart attacks, which can be fatal.
yeah.
And burnout is just very difficult for employees to have. You wind up losing employees more likely.
And
And
then you have to pay to train new ones. Like it's bad across the board. Like,
a lot of companies now, and some of this is sort of COVID related. We hear a constant drumbeat whenever I go up. People are complaining that there's just not enough staff to, at the levels they were used to from pre-pandemic. But I think a lot of companies also create structures where taking sick time, you're pressured to not do so because you're going to make life miserable for your employees. So it's your
yeah.
coworkers. So
Well,
it's like, okay, well, I can't, I literally don't want my coworker to have to cancel this pre-planned trip with their, daughter or something because I have a cold, because I know that's what'll happen. My boss will call that person in because there's no room for error,
yeah.
because, it certainly saves money for the boss to sort of imagine a scenario where no one gets sick. Uh,
Well, generally speaking, most smaller businesses don't hire enough people to be able to take sick time. Like, when I was working retail, like we didn't have enough people so that anyone could ever take sick time. I never got to take a sick day ever. I also never got any paid time off because retail. Like I think until like I had been working there for like 6 years. But yeah, like if I had called in, the store would not have been able to open because there was like a few people with keys and one of them was scheduled at a time, like for the most part. Like,
And even the vacation time is very strenuous because
oh yeah,
it's structured so that when someone's out, everyone is having to like they can't assume it's like, oh well, okay, well here's what X amount of people were ever able to do. If we
yeah,
reduce that by one, we need to make an expectation of what that would be. It's like no, it's the same output. So you work like hell when someone is out, and then when it's your turn for a vacation, you're not actually going out and loving life or whatever. You're literally recovering, often sick.
yeah.
There's a lot of people wind up because they worked exerted themselves. So it's not a good system all around. But we're still seeing it. And you've written about this. It was an ongoing
Mhm.
problem prior to the pandemic. Were we sort of naive in believing that the pandemic would perhaps change how we view the fact about people coming to work
I
deathly
mean,
ill?
yes, because a bajillion businesses actually like did get in trouble for refusing to give people their paid time off during COVID, including like McDonald's, Marriott franchises, like all of these businesses just would fight, like instead of giving people the 2 weeks paid time off they were like legally required to give them, would not do that and then fire them because America. I want to read something from uh, it was like a note posted by a manager at the Marriott in Providence, Rhode Island, interestingly enough. And this person wrote, calling in sick is probably the most destructive thing you can do here, besides stealing or setting the place on fire. I worked 16 years at the Providence Marriott, and I called in sick exactly one time. Also, your sick pay that is listed on your paycheck is treated just like vacation time. We were mandated by the state to give you that, so we took away vacation time in lieu of sick time. But anytime you need to schedule a regular day off, you can request so, and we will pay you in sick time if you have any available, and that is perfectly okay. But calling in sick is perfectly not okay. When you call in sick, you do major, major, major damage to the operation, just so you know, in no uncertain terms. And the irony of this is that one of the only times I've actually been sick, like legitimately sick in like the last decade, was like I got sick while at a Marriott in Rhode Island, like when we were visiting for Thanksgiving. Like I had a full on fever and everything. And so like reading this, I'm like, okay. So and Marriott was one of the other companies that like didn't want to give people sick time. I got super sick there. I got a fever. My sister got sick with another thing. So they're making customers sick more than likely. Like if you're working with people, if you're making your coworkers sick. If you're working with customers, you're making customers sick. It's not like, you're a wonderful saint. You're literally making people sick so that you can like get an ego boost.
Yeah, and the studies show like just someone taking a couple days off, uh,
Yeah.
if they have, and this is not meaning the bubonic plague. It just means a normal cold where you're contagious and you're sick and you should
Yeah.
stay at home for a couple days. Um, that actually would benefit the company because you're not having the illness cycle through 10 or 12
Yeah.
people. And this attitude, it just reminded me of how in the Superman comics, Clark Kent would try to sort of budget in actual sick time because he's kind of like even from a child, like his parents realized, oh yeah, we probably should keep him home at least once or twice, or they might think he's an alien. Except here, they would just be like, oh well, no, you're perfect because you've had perfect attendance all
Yeah.
through school and at every job you've had. We're not going to ask any questions. And Superman wasn't just lying on the couch; he would go out and actually do Superman stuff on his kind of scheduled, pretend I'm a normal human being days. But David Laska at Fox News, similar to what you had just read, he wrote in 2017 that paid sick leave sounds like a good idea, but isn't. Why? Because mandatory paid sick leave forces business owners who can't afford paid leave benefits to provide them. And this becomes the sort of common, almost annoying progressive argument that we
Yeah.
make that, well, if you can't afford to either pay your employees enough to live or to get sick, to acknowledge their
Yeah.
mortality, then maybe you should not
Get to have a business.
be a
Like,
business. I mean, like the corporations are the sort of the robber barons. I mean, that's just its own problem, its own issue. But
mhm.
the kind of mom and pops that sort of kind of say, we're not Starbucks, but we can't afford to pay our employees anything so that
I mean,
please
it's
come and
actually
be not
scary the
Starbucks.
amount of stuff that small businesses get away with in general. Like, um, not only in like many situations do they not have to pay sick leave, but they're also technically like not beholden to discrimination laws. Like legally, federally, if you have under 15 employees, you can just like fire people for discriminatory reasons. Like legally, you can do that. Most states have like a lower threshold of like, I don't know. I think a few of them have like no one is allowed to fire people for discriminatory reasons. But
Yeah.
federally, if you have fewer than 15 employees, you can like I could like if I was a racist business owner and I, or manager or whatever, and I come and I take over a place where you're working, I can be like, hello, we have fewer than 15 employees and I am firing you because you are black and you have no like legal recourse.
Hmm. There was a lot of what I call the sort of almost pro corporate exceptions in
Yeah.
both in the Affordable Care Act and in other laws sort of
Hmm.
describing. And I call them pro corporate because it makes me someone more inclined to support businesses that don't meet those thresholds so that they can't get away with it. So, and it's not like I'm saving a great deal of money. So I go in, it's like, okay, well, the barista here isn't wearing a Starbucks outfit and, it's a sort of cool indie shop, but they can get away with all this stuff. At least Starbucks, and I'm not trying to
Yeah.
promote Starbucks, but at least they don't meet these barriers. So I understand that there's at least some requirements legally that they would
Yeah.
have. And I can also advocate for, because no matter what you advocate for, most small businesses, as you described, tend to be out of them. And I've seen them,
Yeah.
and it happens with nonprofits. I remember when Seattle with increased minimum wage and some other, you know, uh, benefits, nonprofits were kind of, how can we get out of this? It was sort of like, oh my God,
Oh
you're
yeah.
a small theater or a small business, you're trying to avoid these things because, oh, woe is me, we'll lose our jobs. David Laska at Fox News had gone on to say the problem with mandatory paid sick leave is that employers have to pay twice as much for the same service. They've got to pay for the sick person and they've got to pay for the person covering for the sick person. But, this is all, but this is the price of doing business, right, Robin?
Yeah.
Like,
Like you it will cost you more in the long run if everyone at your place of work gets sick. It will cost you more in the long run if you get a bunch of customers sick and they don't want to go to your place anymore. Like, I'm freaking scared to go to a Marriott now. Like, I really am. Like, I don't want to go to one because I don't want to like get sick. And I know that like they don't like their workers taking time off for sick to like um taking sick time. And I know that I've gotten a fever there. I know other people I know have gotten sick at Marriott's, and I am never going to one again. Also, they're owned by the Mormons. So,
okay, well, hopefully
and the
Marriott
Book of Mormon and
will
all
not
of
sue
the,
us.
yeah, I could be making that up. No, I know that they used to be. I don't know if they are now, but something. But
So employees who often in certain states, employees who take sick days are required to also provide a doctor's note. I believe it's if they take more than 3 consecutive days. I know that's the case here in Oregon. What's sort of interesting about that is, some of these employees, especially in retail, it's not that easy for them to actually see a doctor,
yeah, because they don't even have health insurance. So, like, where are you getting a doctor from?
and you're sort of dragging your sick behind to probably one of what I consider the most unpleasant places in the world, a doctor's waiting
Yeah,
office, for them to tell you, um, based on my medical experience, you have a cold,
yeah,
you are human, mortal, you have a cold, go home, rest, which you should have been doing for the next couple days. You will know when you feel better, then go back to work. So the requirement for a doctor's note, someone had wrote that it obviously does not build trust between employee and employer if you require that, um, and the expectation is that people will work unless they are deathly ill. So they're saying like it has to be something where you literally are going to a doctor and a doctor says, okay, well, you have something
yeah.
so horrible, here's some medication for it, and that justifies. So the expectation is that when you have the cold, you are working and getting other people sick, even though um, most sick leave policies don't reflect kind of how often the average, even relatively healthy person will contract the common cold and how long it technically takes for them to recover from it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the studies that I was reading showed that like a lot of the weirdly like banks, a group of banks basically started paying for more healthcare for their employees and actually like made more money in the long run because people were more productive. Because even like, when people have chronic health issues, those chronic health issues can affect their, ability to be productive. If they have chronic migraines, if they have um, chronic allergies, chronic pain, irritable bowel syndrome was apparently a very big one. Like, actually getting treatment for those things. Although rudely, insurance does not cover a lot of allergy medications, which is very unfortunate for me. But uh, like getting those things taken care of save them millions and millions of dollars because their employees were not sick. Even like things like depression, getting treatment for depression made people like more productive at work. So the thing is, you actually do get better results when you take care of people's health, when you let them have sick days. But it's like Americans don't want that. Like they'd almost rather have less money and be less successful as a company than, be like giving people sick days and letting people, and giving people health care because they think that for some reason this is a character building experience for people.
I want to read this comment from our one of our posters here. This problem seems the worst in the service, retail, food industries. You don't want to schedule people in an overlapping way that could account for someone being sick. I've experienced that in the
Right.
corporate world where wasn't allowed to schedule writers based on, okay, well, this is what they could produce. Um, Imagining, presuming that there will be people out for illness or an accident or something's going to happen. It's like, well, no, it needs to be presuming that everyone's there. And if not, they then just have a really tough day.
Oh
That
yeah.
was even told to me. But of course, that is not like these fields where people are working in around other people. So that you would think that they would have even more of an obligation to not have sick people cooking your food or
Yeah.
going into people's homes if they are like your movers or something or whatever. But those are the sort of the fields where it's even less likely. If I work from home, so if I were to work while sick, and I've written in bed. It can
Yeah.
happen. But, if you're making someone a sandwich, maybe you should be okay. Maybe it should be a higher
Yeah.
threshold for that.
I mean, also, if you're operating heavy machinery, like,
Yes, like, errors that can lead to
and we
death.
have so many serious accidents a year because truck drivers are overtired. They're like working when they're sick. They're working when they're medicated for sickness, and they crash into people, or people operating like tractors and things are knocking into people because they're taking sinus medication and they're kooky from it. Like, it's not like, if I'm taking Benadryl and writing, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to make a spelling error. um I can function. But like, if I were driving people for a living, then
Yeah,
there would be a little bit of a problem.
you kind of want 100% for that. And those were the areas where it was the least. I think
Yeah.
that gets us back to late last year when there was the potential railway strike that
Yeah.
got averted. And when President Biden had signed the bill averting the strike, he said, "Our nation's rail system is literally the backbone of our supply chain.
So who cares if they get sick days?
So much of what we rely on is delivered on rail, from clean water to food and gas and every other good. A rail shutdown would have devastated our economy. Without freight rail, many of our industries would have literally shut down." That's all true,
Yeah.
but it reflects the sort of cognitive dissonance we've often seen regarding essential workers. They're key. We acknowledge that they're key to a functioning society, but we can't afford to pay them more, or in the case of the rail workers, give them, paid sick time. So I think they
Yeah.
were asking for a whopping 7 days, but only got one, which is sort of like, one is almost insulting because it's just like, I mean, you're unless you're sort of you're
Superman.
gonna have, yeah, you're great. Here's my one sick day. That was a really bad encounter with kryptonite. I just need one day to recover from it and I'll be back. But no, the average person needs more, especially for railway workers. And it was the idea. It's like, well, our system requires you to work while sick, basically.
Well, I mean, honestly,
And our
it's not even that like it requires them to work while sick. The railroad companies didn't want to give them the sick days, and Biden was like, well, they don't want to give it to you, so you're just going to have to not have them. Like, and you can't go on strike to demand them because you're too important, which is kind of the whole like point of a strike. Like, you're supposed to show the employers that you are important enough that like they need to give you your shit. Weirdly, I need to take a sick leave really quickly from this post. I just have to get. I'll be back in a second. Thanks. Sorry.
see here, Michael had said, ironically, the most healthy year I had was 2020, due to most people wearing a mask everywhere. Only got COVID when my child went to the first 3 days of school. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were demonstrably healthier
Sorry, I didn't
during
want to sneeze on air.
the pandemic, when and we obviously acknowledge that um, that couldn't be maintained forever. You're going to have to go
Yeah.
out into the world around other people. One of the weird aspects of it was that even though we learned that, say, wearing a mask on public transportation or during flu season, or even having kids, I think that kids are sort of petri dishes. I know as a parent, and my son never had a problem wearing a mask. This was something I felt was projected upon children for political gain, from right wingers, that this was somehow the worst thing ever for children. It was literally child abuse to have them wear masks. And so they went to school without them because most schools have kind of eliminated the mask mandates. And kids are getting, sick again in tremendous numbers. And there's a reasonable debate about how much of that is necessary and normal and building up immune systems. But unfortunately, we don't get to really have a reasoned debate from half the population about public health or public safety is just crazy
because
stuff
they're
about
crazy.
you
Like,
should just work while sick, which is not good, not good for anyone. Before Robin had left, there was we're discussing the railway strike, and yeah, there was the interesting, strikes are intended to sort of show worker leverage.
it's a show of power. That's why, I say COVID in general was a lot like a general strike. Like it's what, we had always been talking about accomplishing with a general strike, where like, quick explanation, a general strike is when everyone goes on strike and basically, does a giant show of the like how much people rely on workers in order to like function, and that is really what COVID did. Um,
Yeah, the irony is that, and the law, this has been before COVID, they've come up with laws that if you are too valuable,
yeah,
so in New York, it's technically illegal for the transit workers to strike because the city can't function without you.
yeah,
So that is such of, you are so valuable, we're going to remove your key power to bargain collectively. And so when the president's talking about how the economy will collapse, it's sort of the onus becomes on the workers. Like, well, don't strike. This is what's going to happen. The economy would
rather
collapse.
than on the
Opposed to,
businesses to be
yeah,
like,
just give people sick time and take the hit. Find it in, CEO salaries or executive bonuses or something. But generally speaking, your labor force at that level is not kind of why you're having trouble keeping the lights on.
no, not so much. Well, I mean, for the most part, like, I mean, CEO pay, executive pay has like risen to like what, like 200 times the average worker, whereas it used to be like 30 times, which is still a lot, but now it's, so much more. And there's this idea that, people at the top have to get paid so much because they're so wonderful, and, everyone else kind of has to like take the hit. The people at the bottom have to take the hit so that, the company can function and you can have these executives getting paid tons and tons of money. And it really has not worked out very well for, the vast majority of people. It's caused like a ton of income inequality, which is not great, and causes other problems. Like you know, there are there are effects to everything. Like it's not, you can't just be like, yeah, that's, yeah. Um, like you can't just do that and then have there not be any like other effects. It's like you can't not give people sick days and have there not be any other effects. Um,
Yes, especially for a supposed pro-family party, Republicans would probably want paid sick leave because if when kids are sick, obviously I as a parent, you need to take care of them. Again, I work from home, so if my son is sick, I
yeah,
can still work more or less. But if you literally are leaving the house and working at TGI Fridays, you can't
yeah.
sort of abandon your sick child. So if they're sick, you need to take the day off. And making that either that you'll lose your job or it'll be financially ruinous for you to take sick time is sort of, it's not a pro-family approach or
No,
pro-family
not
policy.
really.
Um, and we have politicians like nepo baby Matt Getz insisting that poor people need to work to get any sort of healthcare benefits, and that's sort of frustrating because he's targeting that sort of right wing Republican argument that uh, people who want healthcare are lazy deadbeats who don't work. And the problem is that a tremendous number of Americans do work. They do work very hard, harder than Matt gets,
Yeah.
and they do not have access to healthcare. That has been the problem, that we tried to resolve the Affordable Care Act, that we did to a certain degree, and that we're still sort of dealing with, that people who work often two, three jobs
Yeah.
are deliberately not being given options for healthcare because they're kept under full-time hours.
I
So
mean, much like sick days, healthcare saves us money. We would save so much money in general as a country if we could have socialized healthcare like the rest of the world. We love you too. Um, like we'd save so much money. It would be so much less expensive across the board. But we can't have it because Americans have it in their head. Even Democrats, like honestly, like, I've given up pushing for socialized healthcare because like regular Democrats are more angry about that than Republicans are. Like I swear to God, we'd have a better time getting it passed if we could convince Republicans to support it than trying to get moderate Democrats to support it. Um, and I think it would actually possibly be easier because they hate socialized healthcare like more than anyone because their fear is that it's going to result in people calling them communists in addition to
and
encouraging laziness by having people be able to go see a doctor. um it's it would save us so much money. It would be so much more functional. It makes so much more sense, but we can't. It's like we can never do the things that make sense because people have a bug up their ass about what they think builds character and does not in fact do that.
yes, I mean, if you're working 60 hours a week, as many, I mean, I get, if it's frustrating because I said, if actual working poor people, and, I hardly live on Skid Row, but I know people who work 60 hours a week, multiple jobs, and they don't
Oh yeah.
have access to benefits. They're working as hard as often getting a full-time job is sort of a break because then you can get access. You're perhaps making a little
Oh
bit
yeah.
more, and you're getting health care. Uh, the the interesting thing you had mentioned with Democrats being averse to perceived socialized medicine. I know a lot of Democrats, Tim Ryan, and many other moderates have been, their push is usually for what they call well-paying, often union jobs, sort of a concept of what those, the type of jobs, a lot of people's parents might have had, especially in rural parts of the Rust Belt. They promote those jobs as part of the infrastructure package, and that's
Mhm.
great. And I support their doing that. Those jobs are good. It's good to have jobs that non-college educated people can raise a family um, with. The challenge, though, still is that we very much it's the 21st century, and so there is a gig economy. Corporations are still incentivized to leverage a gig economy and benefit from people working. You know, so every time you might say, okay, well, go get your job at you know Factory 101 and do that type of job, but you do want your latte and you do want your fast food burger and you do want to go see
Well,
a
I mean, it's
movie
bread and
and most of
roses. People get mad about, the saying bread and roses, but it's true. Like people need to eat and they also need like nice things sometimes. Oh, they're pop art nails this week. Sorry. Um, but no, it's so ass backwards the way that we do things. It's not even good for business. Like honestly, it would be so much easier for um people to have their small businesses if we had universal health care because and they wouldn't have to worry, oh, I can't employ people for this amount of hours, I can't give these people this amount of work because oh no, I can't afford health insurance. And it screws everyone.
sure.
Like it's not actually good. It's not even good for union workers to have that like as part of their bargains. They can't ask for more. It's just bad.
Yeah, I don't mean to be the capitalist wet blanket on your
Yeah.
socialist fantasies, Robin. But the challenge is that humans are humans, especially in America, and um, our the structure of our government and our taxation system is such that people in the means to pay taxes will do everything they can to avoid them. So I live in Portland, Oregon. We do have, the big complaint from people who have been leaving. It's very familiar. Is the taxes are too high and there's too much crime. And so this is not a debate about how true the crime issues are here. That can, be a different topic for another day. But the perception, there are people who do leave. It's happening in New York as well. People feel, okay, the taxes are too high, so I'm going to leave. And so we have, I'm happy to pay more uh, if it means, say, universal pre-K in the city. The problem is that those programs then wind up being less well funded because people do bolt. And so the challenge is, how do you get to a system of where people are willing to pay more in taxes for benefits that aren't just about bombing, um, you know, Chinese
I mean,
balloons or whatever.
well, because it saves money in the long run. And historically, when you do provide these things, even if we were to pay, like, sick day, have, like, government paid sick days and what have you, and family leave, like they do in a lot of other countries, um, people realize that it saves them money and then they do not want to give it up. Like, even the most conservative people in England are not like, oh, it would be great if we didn't have the NHS. Like, they all want it. Like, they're um, they're any country that has these programs, none of them are trying to get rid of them. Like, these countries that have universal pre-K, that have childcare, they're not trying to get rid of them. Like, they're, very much enjoying them. And once you give people something, they don't want to give it up. Like, because here's the thing, you don't really, like, notice. I mean, you notice your taxes, but you don't, like, you notice when you're hurting. Like, people notice when they're hurting. And if our taxes go to things that make us hurt less, we're going to not notice it as much, if that makes sense.
Well, the challenge there is that the people who are paying the taxes, or at certain levels, so the well off, they are not already hurting. Their kids are already at a nice
Yeah.
preschool. They already have health care. So
Yeah.
Republicans can very easily appeal to that, and trying to connect, like addressing income inequality and programs for homeless people and for other that can have long-term effects. It is easy for Republicans to just say, we're not going to tax you, but we're just going to actually maybe tax you a little because we're going to fund the police and have the police deal with rising crime and homeless on the streets. That is it's just a human instinct. Unfortunately, that's what we're sort of seeing. I think Republicans have sort of figured out that, like, even the stuff that says it's hard to take this stuff away, a lot of that happened when Republicans were, and they've always been slightly sociopathic, but they were more inclined to not be outright nihilists. So here they sort of they're sabotaging you from the word go. And that is what's making it harder to
But again, like,
well,
if they were to if we were to invest in, social things, we wouldn't have the homelessness problem. We would have lower crime. We would have all of these things that, like, we end up having to pay more for because it's like, when you put off fixing something, it costs more in the end.
mhm.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, your challenge, though, again, is not just
oh, I know.
Republicans. It goes back to what you said. It is Democrats who believe that that is a way for them to lose their jobs, to say,
Yeah.
oh, well, we know that there's homeless people on the streets, there's tent cities. We know that crime is rising. We can address all of that by raising your taxes for more social programs. That is a quick way for Republicans to say, vote all these guys out and give me more us more money to let the cops run free and we'll cut all your taxes and so forth, and cut social programs and wasteful spending. And that is the dilemma, because there's a degree of that a lot of Democrats find appealing, especially the tough on
Yeah.
crime
And they
rhetoric.
don't necessarily, they're not willing to take the risk of saying this will actually save you money in the long run. And, but when they do take that risk, they end up being pretty fucking successful with it. Like, I know
Yeah.
everyone here hates Bernie Sanders, but that is why he was successful in a lot of ways, because people were like, oh, yes, these things would be good. And he wasn't afraid to say it. And people can pick up on when people are afraid, like, no one likes a mealy mouth bitch. Like it's
No, no one
so
does.
well, I mean
Um,
some people do, but I don't care for them.
yeah, I think before we close up, I wanted to. You had spoken about. I think Connecticut though has
Yes.
passed a law regarding paid sick
No,
leave.
they're voting on it right now. Democrats proposed the law. Um and they're hoping to get mandated sick leave, which a few states have, and that's great. We should have it nationally, but hopefully Connecticut will be able to get it passed, and people in Connecticut will be able to have, like, not have to go to work when they are sick, which is such an insane thing that we can, like, that's a massive luxury. Like,
Yeah,
like, oh my God, people not going to work when they're sick. Like, it's
could be.
it's so American that we would rather take the financial hit that comes with sending people to work sick, um, than, you know, than letting people not come into work sick. It's just, or letting people take sick days. It's the most American fucking thing on earth.
Oh yes.
Like,
One of the challenges with even after recovery from COVID was that were um, you needed to take it easy for a while for your
yeah,
body to fully recover, and that's our system of it just doesn't work. Our healthcare system is not, or you know, companies don't really have anything of that in place, and so we had politicians, saying, like, people in their late 70s, so ranging from Joe Manchin to 80-year-old Joe Biden, or 80 something Nancy Pelosi, saying, oh, I have COVID, which we've been telling you is serious because we're the party that believes it's a serious issue. But, I'm feeling otherwise fine, and I'm going to continue working from home. Obviously, they have the luxury of working from home. It's not like they can do it in their bunny slippers, perhaps, and you don't have to stand in
yeah.
a grocery store checkout line for 8 hours while kind of not at 100%. But it bothered me at the time. I felt like this was an opportunity for the president to be like, yeah, okay, well, maybe Kamala's going to handle this for the week. I'm 80 years old. I have COVID. Yes, I've been vaxxed. You should be vaxxed and boosted. That's what's keeping me from
Mhm.
being hospitalized like Trump was. But I should probably be Netflixing and chilling for a week
Yeah.
at least.
Well, we need people to, like, one of the things that they discussed in these studies was that people need to model, and people at the top need to model taking time off when they're sick and recovering, and providing that as just normalizing it. Like, if we don't see people regularly taking time off when they need it, and we don't see people modeling that behavior, it becomes aberrant. Like, it becomes, oh no, I don't want to be the person taking time off. If, like, these other people are, saying, oh, I'm still going to work when I'm sick. It's bad for everyone. Like, we do need to model that sort of behavior. Um, uh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, thank
But
you. Thank you very much for that. I think that this topic is something we'll probably have to return to because COVID is officially over. I think there was a declaration And
I mean,
so
people are still dying, but it's over.
as Q from Star Trek Next Generation said, your species is always suffering and dying. So
Yeah.
why this is not Harley news. So but yes, thank you everyone for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. We'll be back next time with either a surprise guest, if I can nail that down, or a topic of interest to all of you. Thank
Yeah.
you, Robin. Thanks everyone. We'll see you
All right.
soon.
See you guys.